Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. You know World War II, right? I mean, it was this huge global conflict, clash of ideologies, all that. There's so many stories from that time. But, and maybe you've noticed this too, sometimes the big battles and famous leaders kind of overshadow these other incredible events that happened during the war too. And some of them, let me tell you, are almost unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, you think about it, and it really is amazing how much human experience got crammed into those few years.
Right. Exactly. So today we're going to use this article, The Horrors and Heroism of World War II, to, I don't know, kind of like peek into these lesser known parts of the war. It's like we're going to talk about these secret missions that had massive consequences, acts of bravery that are almost mythical, you know? And even how like nature itself got involved in the fighting sometimes. It's going to be a wild ride, so buckle up.
Yeah, forget the boring history books, right?
Exactly.
This is like going behind the scenes.
Okay, so first up, we've got a mission that was so secret that its success was almost as dangerous as if it had failed. The voyage of the USS Indianapolis.
Yeah, the Indianapolis. A lot of people know about its tragic end, but the reason for that last trip, it was a closely guarded secret. And if it got out, it could have changed the whole war.
Okay, so what was the secret?
Well, the Indianapolis was carrying these really important parts for, get this, little boy, the atomic bomb.
The atomic bomb, wow.
Yeah, the one that was being developed, like, super secretly as part of the Manhattan Project. So this mission, it shows you just how important the race for better technology was back then, and the pressure on those secret operations, it was immense.
They actually managed to deliver those parts to Tinian Islands,
Right, yeah.
And then, boom, almost immediately disaster. The Indianapolis gets hit by Japanese torpedoes. Talk about irony, right? Delivering a weapon meant to end the war, and then getting caught in the crossfire. I mean, it just shows you how chaotic and unpredictable war can be.
Absolutely. So out of almost 1,200 men on board, something like 300 died in the attack.
Oh, man.
The rest, over 900 of them, ended up in the water. Imagine that, being stranded in the Pacific, no life jackets, the sun beating down on you, dehydration, and then there's the threat of, well, you know.
Sharks, right?
Yeah, the sharks. This article doesn't sugarcoat anything. It talks about the constant shark attacks, the fuel oil in the water, people trying to stay alive in this really harsh environment. It's hard to imagine what those guys went through.
And to make things even worse, because the mission was so secret, no one knew to look for them. They were out there for 4 days before they were rescued. Out of those 900, only 316 survived. It makes you think, right? How do you balance secrecy with the safety of your own people? That's a tough one.
It really is. You see that dilemma in all sorts of situations, not just war.
So then there's this whole other layer to the story. Captain Charles McVay, the captain of the ship, gets court-martialed. They blamed him, even though there was no intel about enemy submarines in the area.
It is crazy, right? And here's the kicker. Commander Hashimoto, the Japanese officer who sank the Indianapolis, he actually testified in McVay's defense.
Wow, really?
Yeah, he said point blank, there was nothing McVay could have done to avoid the torpedoes. I think that shows you just how complicated war is.
It's not always black and white.
No, not at all. But sadly, for Captain McVay, the guilt and the loss of his crew, it just became too much. He took his own life years later. It's a reminder that the casualties of war, they don't always happen on the battlefield.
The USS Indianapolis, it's the deadliest U.S. naval disaster that didn't happen directly because of combat.
Yeah, and you know, when you step back and look at it, the story of the Indianapolis shows the real human cost of war, the cost that you don't always hear about in the history books. These people, they were just trying to do their jobs, and they ended up in this terrible situation. It really makes you think about how fragile life is.
It does. Okay, so let's switch gears completely. We're going from the Pacific Ocean to the frozen battlefields of Finland. We're going to talk about Simo Häyhä, the White Death. Now, this guy, he was something else. He was incredibly skilled, and he took on the Soviets almost single-handedly.
Oh yeah, Simo Häyhä. He was just a farmer. But during the Winter War against the Soviets, he became the deadliest sniper in history. Over 500 confirmed kills in just 100 days. It's hard to believe, especially considering the conditions they were fighting in.
That's an average of 5 kills a day, every single day, for 100 days.
Yeah, crazy, right?
And it's not just the number of kills, it's how he did it. He didn't even use a scope.
I know. He preferred iron sights. He said it was to avoid glare, which makes sense when you're hiding in the snow. He was so careful, so meticulous. He even kept snow in his mouth so his breath wouldn't give him away.
Wow. He was dedicated to his craft.
Totally. And the Soviets, they knew he was out there. They were terrified of him. They sent counter snipers, even artillery trying to take him out. It's like a personal duel happening within this bigger war.
But he kept going. He even survived getting shot in the face with an explosive round. I mean, come on, how do you survive that?
I know, right? It's incredible. That just shows you how tough he was. But the amazing thing is, after the war, he just went back to his farm and lived a quiet life. He died when he was 96 years old.
From the deadliest sniper in history to a peaceful farmer, it's a pretty incredible contrast. It's a reminder that there's more to these guys than just their wartime experiences.
Right. It makes you wonder about how people cope after going through something like that.
It does. Okay, so for our next story, we're going back in time a bit to World War I. This one's about Henry Tandey, the most decorated British soldier of the whole war. It's a story with a lot of what-ifs.
Yeah, it's a heavy one. So during the Battle of Ramree, Tandey comes across this German soldier. The guy's wounded and unarmed. Tandey decides to let him go. He doesn't shoot him.
An act of mercy.
Exactly. But, and this is the part that really gets to you, that German soldier was Adolf Hitler.
Whoa.
Yeah. It's chilling, isn't it? You can't help but wonder, what if Tandey had made a different choice that day? Would World War II have even happened? Would the Holocaust have happened?
It's impossible to know, but it's a question that really sticks with you. One small act of kindness, and the world could have been completely different. It really shows you how unpredictable history is, how much can hinge on one moment.
It really does. You know, it's like those butterfly effect stories where one small change can have massive consequences. And it makes you think about the choices we make and how they might affect things in ways we can't even imagine.
Absolutely. Okay, so switching gears again, and well, this next story is pretty gruesome. It's about the crocodile massacre on Ramree Island in Burma. This one, it's not so much about human enemies as it is about, well, nature.
This one's intense. So the Battle of Ramree Island, the Japanese are trying to get away from the Allied forces. So they decide to hide out in these mangrove swamps. Big mistake.
Big mistake because
those swamps were full of saltwater crocodiles. Huge ones. And, well, the article says it was the biggest crocodile attack on humans in recorded history.
Whoa. How many people are we talking about here?
About 1,000 soldiers went into those swamps. Only about half of them came out.
Oh, man.
The rest, they were either killed by the crocodiles or they died from disease, dehydration, you name it. It just goes to show you nature doesn't care about your wars.
You're just another animal in the food chain.
Exactly. The survivors, they were traumatized, both physically and mentally. It must have been absolutely terrifying to be hunted by these giant reptiles in the dark.
I can't even imagine. Okay, so for our last story, we're going to talk about someone a little more, well, unusual. Lieutenant Colonel John Mad Jack Churchill. And this guy's story is almost like something out of a legend.
Mad Jack Churchill. Now, he was a character. He was a British officer in World War II, and he had this, well, unconventional approach to fighting.
Unconventional how?
He went into battle with a longbow, a broadsword, and bagpipes.
He's taking a longbow and a broadsword to a gunfight.
Pretty much. Some people say he was the last person to kill an enemy soldier with a bow and arrow in a modern war, although he said that wasn't true. But either way, can you picture it? Everyone else is shooting guns, and he's charging in with a sword.
Like something out of a movie. What do you think was going on there? Why would he do that?
It's like he was clinging to this old-fashioned idea of what a warrior was supposed to be. He was this throwback to a different time, in the middle of the 20th century. You know, in a way, it's kind of inspiring. He was being true to himself even when everyone else was doing things differently.
It definitely makes him stand out.
Totally. So, I don't know, what do you think? What have we learned from all these stories? We got the secret mission, the sniper, the act of mercy, the crocodiles, the sword-wielding officer. It's a lot to take in.
It is. I guess one thing that really stands out is how unpredictable war is. You never know what's going to happen, who's going to survive, how it's all going to play out.
Right. And we saw some incredible examples of human endurance, people pushing themselves to the limit to survive. And then there's the weight of decisions, how one choice can have these massive ripple effects that you could never predict.
Yeah, like that story about Henry Tandey and Hitler. It really makes you think.
It does. And then there's nature, too. It can be just as dangerous as any human enemy.
So here's a question for everyone listening. What if we tried to connect all these stories together? I mean, they seem pretty different on the surface, but is there some underlying theme that connects them? Some truth about human nature, or maybe about war itself? And another thing to think about, how do these little individual choices, the ones that seem so small at the time, how do they end up shaping history? I don't know the answers, but it's definitely something to ponder. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.
See you next time.